Hello everybody, welcome back to Start McClary Music. I'm Sean, and today we are going to talk about a good era, which I like to call a classic era in the 1950s, about a man who released great songs during that time, and that is Johnny Cash in his Sun Records era. We're going to talk about the era, talk about the songs, talk about the hits, talk about all the history behind it, talk about how he started, and all that good stuff. So, why don't we get started? Johnny Cash was born on February 26, 1932 in Kingsland, Arkansas to Carrie Rivers and Ray Cash. He was the fourth of 7 children. In his early life, he was referred to as J.R. Cash. His siblings were Roy, Margaret, Jack, Rebecca, Joanne, and Tommy. Tommy also became a country singer, too. When J.R. was 3 years old in 1935, the family moved to Dyes, Arkansas, which was a New Deal colony established to give poor families the opportunity to work land that they may later own. By the age of 5, he was working in a cotton field with his family, as well as was singing to them while he worked. The family had personal and money struggles during the Great Depression, and Cash claimed that he had sympathy for the poor and working class. J.R. had a very close relationship with his older brother Jack, but tragically on May 13, 1944, Jack was cutting wood into fence posts for money that the family needed, and unfortunately he was pulled onto the table, and since the saw was unguarded, he was severely injured and almost cut in two. Jack suffered from the injuries before dying a week later. J.R. had a difficult feeling of guilt over the incident after that, and as well as having a difficult relationship with his father. Following Jack's death, he learned to play the guitar, mainly taught by his mother. While he was in high school, Cash began to sing on at a local radio station before going to the United States Air Force in 1950, where he worked as a Morse code operator. In 1951, Cash met the first love of his life, Vivian Liberto, at a roller skating rink, and they dated for 3 weeks before Cash departed to Germany for a job. Cash was honorably discharged from the Army in 1954. Then after that, he married the love of his life, Vivian. The couple moved to Nashville, Tennessee, where Cash had his first daughter, Roseanne. He supported his family by selling appliances and studying to become a radio announcer. During his free time, Cash played guitar and jammed with auto mechanics Luther Perkins, who played the guitar, and then Marshall Grant, who played the bass, where eventually he worked up the courage to visit Sun Records, hoping to get a recording contract. Johnny, Luther, and Marshall auditioned with the gospel song I Was There When It Happened, but Sam Phillips was no longer recording or marketing gospel songs anymore, and they had to play something different, which he won him over by playing his first songs, Cry, 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 and Hey Porter, which was his debut single that was released on May 21st, 1955, and which was a quick success. Later in 1955, he recorded what was one of his best songs, FOLSOM Prison Blues, which was considered to be his breakout song, reaching the top 5 in the country charts. The song along with that single was So Doggone Lonesome, when they were both released on December 15th, 1955. Also around this time, he went to the Grand Ole Opry to perform, and on backstage, that's where he met his future wife, June Carter, and instantly liked her from the start. By 1956, Johnny Cash's popularity grew more, with one of his more known songs, I Walk the Line, along with Get a Rhythm. They were both released on May 1st, 1956. I Walk the Line was Johnny Cash's first song to reach number 1 in the country charts, as well as the first song to reach the top 20 in the pop charts. it is still one of his most popular songs today. And I Walk the Line with all of Johnny Cash's solos became a concert staple until his death in 2003. Later in 1956, they released two more songs, and that was called There You Go and Train of Love. Like I Walk the Line, There You Go reached number 1 in the country charts, receiving acclaim for its lyrics and sound. Train of Love also had success, reaching number 7 in the pop charts. By the next year in 1957, Johnny Cash began to change. He started drinking excessively and taking stimulant and depressant drugs, and his marriage with Vivian began to go south because of this, as well as his constant touring. But the marriage stayed alive for now. His first songs in 1957 was Next in Line and Don't Make Me Go, both released on April 15th. They both reached number 9 in the country charts, and Next in Line reached the top 100 in the pop charts. Later in 1957, Cash released two more songs, Home of the Blues and Give My Love to Rose, on August 10th. Home of the Blues reached the top 5 in the country charts, as well as number 88 in the pop charts. As well as Give My Love to Rose did not have the success as Home of the Blues did. It's still a classic song to this day, reaching number 13 in the country charts. And he also released his very first album called Johnny Cash with His Hot and Blue Guitar, released on October 11th. It was the first album ever to be released to the Sun Records label, as well as it had included an improvised version of the song that they auditioned with called I Was There When It Happened. The last songs that he released in 1957 was Ballad of the Teenage Queen and a new rock and roll song called Big River. Like I Walk the Line and There You Go, Ballad of the Teenage Queen reached number 1 in the country chart. It had one of the most amazing stories during the Sun Records era, which was about a small town girl, which is the prettiest they've ever seen, who loved a boy next door, who was employed at a candy store. And then she was taken to Hollywood, and where she became famous, leaving the boy. And then she sold all her fame and went back to the boy because she was unhappy without him. It was the most interesting stories in the Sun Records era. Big River also had success with praise for the rock and roll sound and reaching number 4 in the country charts. By 1958, however, June Carter left the tour and married race car driver Edwin Nix. He still continued to play with his next songs, Guess Things Happen That Way, which also would reach number 1 in the country chart, and Come In Stranger, which reached number 6 in the country chart, both released in May 20th of 1958. And the song Guess Things Happen That Way was about a man struggling after the love of his life had left him, which was another amazing story. However, these were the last songs to be released while Johnny Cash was still employed at Sun Records, as his last recorded with Sun Records was on July 17, 1958. Then shortly after, he went to Columbia Records because it was a bigger company, it had more money, and it basically took his singing career to a next level of fame. And as Sun Records is just a small independent label. But Sun Records continued to release new songs, with his next songs that he released was The Ways of Woman in Love and You Are the Nearest Thing to Heaven, released on August 11, 1958. Both songs reached the top 5 in the charts, and The Ways of Woman in Love reached number 24 in the country charts. His next two songs, It's Just About Time, I Just Thought You'd Like to Know, was released on November 12th of 1958. It's Just About Time reached number 30 in the chart, and I Thought You'd Just Like to Know reached number 85. A day later, Sun Records released his second album called Sing the Songs That Made Him Famous, which included Hank Williams' version that Johnny Cash re-recorded called I Can't Help It. As he entered 1959, he already started his career with Columbia, but Sun was still releasing new songs. The first songs that were released in 59 was Luther Played the Boogie and Thanks a Lot, released on February 15th. reaching number 8 and number 15 on the charts respectively. Then on June 2nd, 1959, Sun released 2 new songs called Katy 2 and Elvis Presley's song I Forgot to Remember to Forget, which Johnny Cash once again re-recorded. Katy 2 reached number 11 and number 66 in the country and pop charts. Later that year they released 2 new songs again, You Tell Me and Goodbye Little Darling on September 15th. Not much is known about these songs except Good Little Darling reached number 22 in the pop charts. The last songs to be released in the 1950s was Straight A's in Love and I Love You Because, released on December 31st, 1959. Straight A's in Love reached number 4 and number 16 in the country and pop charts, and I Love You Because reached number 20 in the pop charts. The 1960s started and Sun Records released his next set of songs called A Story of a Broken Heart and Down the Street to 301 on June 14th. Reaching number 107 and number 85 in the country charts respectively, as also Down the Street to 301 was the last song Johnny Cash recorded in his Sun Records era. They also released another album called Sink Hank Williams, which featured songs that Johnny Cash recorded that was by Hank Williams. The next 2 songs was Mean-Eyed Cat and Ports of a Lonely Heart, released on October 25th. Mean-Eyed Cat reached number 30 in the charts, and actually that's all I could find about those songs. The last songs to be released in 1960 was Oh Lonesome Me and Life Goes On, released on December 10th. Oh Lonesome Me reached number 93 and number 13 in the country and pop charts. Then in 1961, they only released 2 songs, Sugar Time and My Treasure. Not much is known about these songs except My Treasure was recorded in 1954. As they entered 1962, they released their only single that year with songs Blue Train and Born to Lose. Not much is known about either song. However, they released another album with new songs called All Aboard the Blue Train, released on November 15th, 1962. New songs like Rock Island Line, Wreck of the Old 97, and I Heard the Lonesome Whistle Blow. They did not release any of Cash's material in 1963, and then in May 1st of 1964, they released his final single in the Sun Records era called Wide Open Road and another song called Belshazzar. Wide Open Road was one of the first demos Cash recorded, and they also released their last album with new songs called the original Sun Sound of Johnny Cash. The final new songs on this album were Always Alone, Country Boy, Goodnight Irene, New Mexico, and Two Timin' Woman. Despite being the last new songs, they still released new albums with songs that had alternate, undubbed, demo, or incomplete takes. They continued to release new albums that had his Sun Records songs on it as late as 1982. And guys, that's Johnny Cash's early life and Sun Records material. His Sun Records songs still are popular today and are still great classics, and had great stories on it, as well as with Luther Perkins playing the guitar like a bass and bringing that classic Sun sound. If you're a fan of 50s country or 50s rockabilly, or you like great stories and songs, Johnny Cash's Sun Records songs I highly recommend for you. In fact, all the songs on Johnny Cash's Sun Records era are decent to awesome, and I'm going to give Johnny Cash's Sun Records era an A. That's all I have for you guys today, and hopefully you can hit that subscribe button for more bands and more singer-songwriters. Anyways, guys, I'm Start McClary Music. Thanks for watching. Peace.